When it comes to games based on the Wild West, what do you think of? Gun? Call of Juarez, perhaps? What about Wild Arms? I know most of you probably immediately go to Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, and I can't say I blame you. 1 was amazing, and although I thought that the sequel started off way too slowly, so I played something else at the time, I've heard that it's great if you stick through it. But did you know that the Red Dead Redemption games actually have a prequel of sorts? It may not be obvious, but I've read that there are some scant references to it in the other games. Yes, I'm talking about Red Dead Revolver, although I'm sure that's obvious by the title of this video. In Red Dead Revolver, you play as a few different characters, but the story primarily revolves, no pun intended, around Red Harlow. The game starts when Red is a kid, and his father comes home with a fancy new pistol. Suddenly, a group of bandits show up and attack the homestead. Although Red's father attempts to fight them off, Red is the one that does the gunfighting and survives the assault, although he does injure his hand in the process. And now Red's task is very simple: collect some bounties and hope to get some revenge in the process. Although the later Red Dead games were open world, Revolver is much more linear. The game takes place in a traditional stage structure, although there is a kind of hub world in the form of a town of Brimstone. Red simply runs from point A to point B, shooting any enemy that attempts to shoot him, and fights a boss or two every once in a while. Once the boss is taken down, the stage is over, you get paid, and move on to the next area. Rinse and repeat. Being that this is a game based in the Wild West, you get to play with some old-fashioned revolvers, rifles, and shotguns. Personally, I like the pistols more, as they were typically quicker on their firing and also the reloading. Rifles were powerful and had some awesome range, but you had to sacrifice a bit on the reload speeds. The shotguns? Well, personally, I think they suck. They take forever to load new shells into the barrels, and it seems like the damage they cause don't justify that time, regardless on what the stats say. I found one use for them, in a battle against a fort with a Native American pal, in which you can use the shotgun to blast heavies that rush you. One thing you'll want to do is aim for the head. I mean, that should be obvious, but the game has a very lenient hitbox when it comes to headshots. Yeah, you can easily take down enemy banditos with chest shots, but why bother when headshots are quicker and just as easy? And what's really awesome about Red Dead Revolver is that the gameplay is actually surprisingly smooth for a PS2 game. Aiming feels fluid, controls are responsive, and your shots normally connect when you expect them to, especially when you add in those lenient hitboxes. This makes getting a good shot in easy to do, which is nice, since you get cash for every time you make a kill. And you'll want plenty of cash. Between stages and in the various shops in Brimstone, you'll be able to purchase a large variety of items. These can range from simple trinkets that fill up the lore journal on the main menu, to equipment that will unlock multiplayer stages and characters, to weapons. Obviously, better firepower is a worthwhile investment, so you'll probably want to prioritize those purchases. In addition to buying new weapons, old favorites may need to be repaired. I'm not entirely sure how badly weapons will degrade, but I can assume that accuracy and damage will start to diminish. This may not be a big deal against most low-level thugs, but against the bosses, this might be a different story. And again, there are a lot of boss battles. Most, if not all, of the stages end in a battle against some big bad. Most of them don't take a lot of brainpower in order to take them down, with predictable attacks and lots of cronies that will back them up. If you die in one of these battles, no big deal, as there's occasionally checkpoints, but even if there isn't, stages usually aren't too long. Also, dying doesn't really happen all that often in this game. In fact, Red Dead Revolver as a whole is not that difficult. Other than a few late game stages, levels can be completed in a few minutes with minimal risk. Sure, it may take a few attempts to learn where all the enemies are at so you can strike before they ambush you, but with a generous health bar that can be extended, plenty of dropped ammunition, and even a few guns that you can pick up on the run, even a moderately novice gamer can complete this game. Well, at least most of it. Again, some late game stages get frustratingly difficult. There's a horseback ride in which you need to destroy a heavily armored train, and the game doesn't exactly tell you that you need to clamber on top of a train car to move backwards through Gatling gun fire to flip a lever that isn't even hinted at. Later on in this same stage, you need to ride up to a rail car and you can use the Gatling gun there to destroy the locomotive. Another stage has you storming a mansion with 2 friends. It starts off fine enough, but the second half of the level forces you to defend one of the heroes for 3 minutes as he attempts to pick a lock. Annie will assist you by sniping from a balcony, but as she is doing her apparent best, you will get harassed by a bunch of soldiers. As you are flinging bullets their way, you'll run into no less than 5 bosses. Each of them will not only be attacking you, but they'll be rushing to stop your illegal entry into the mansion as well. And obviously, if your lock-picking pal perishes, you'll have to restart. At least you do get a checkpoint before this section, but either way, it took me probably over 30 minutes to clear this area. What's odd is that after this stage, the remainder of the game is surprisingly easier. The final boss is also disappointingly easy, with you simply required to shoot him a bunch of times, then do a final showdown with him. I didn't mention the showdowns yet. These one-on-one duels are easy to understand how to work. You wait for the enemy to draw. Once they do, you draw your pistol and try to time your shots so that critical hits are performed instead of just grazing wounds. The first few showdowns won't challenge you too much, but there is a showdown tournament that you get sucked into in the last quarter of the game, and the final guy you go up against here amps up the reflex requirement, so much so that I tended to try to pull my pistol first. It sometimes worked, but you need to get good at it, as you'll need to fight this guy as a standard boss battle after the showdown. You know, I did fail to talk about the one little gripe I have about the boss battles, which I just reminded myself of as I was talking about the showdown tournament boss. Many of the stage-ending enemies won't take a lot of damage from standard shots. Instead, you'll need to wait for specific opportunities, such as the enemy taking time to reload. Sure, you can slowly whittle down the boss bar by just flinging down as much brass downrange as possible, but doing this gets you the risk of running out of ammo. Sure, you have a knife, but do you really want to fight someone bigger than you with a knife? I didn't think so. If you complete the game, or just want a bit of a diversion from the main campaign, you do have the optional showdown mode. No, this is not just one-on-one duels. Instead, it's a few mini-games that amount to deathmatch with poker elements. No, I'm serious. You pick one of many characters that you might have unlocked, and then a stage. There's a maximum of 4 characters per game, so you do have that limitation. After all of this, you choose the game mode, of which I only tried Bounty Hunter. You then slay enemies and pick up cards that they drop, earning points by winning poker hands. It's actually a pretty awesome idea, and something I wouldn't mind seeing more modern games attempting. Imagine playing Call of Duty and instead of kill confirmed, you are rushing to kill someone to hope that last card completes your full house. Anyone wants to do that and put that in a game they're designing? Hey, just call me for a credit, please. And if you're into lore, there's plenty of it here. Again, by buying what seems like useless, mostly cheap items in various shops, you will unlock pages in this journal. There's a lot to read, and you must back out to the main menu to view this, so there is that slight hiccup. I wish I could read them right away, but I guess when you have enemy bounties that are trying to kill you, you don't have time to read about a bedroll you purchased. The visuals of the game look on par with a typical PS2 game, but what I love is the gritty feel of everything. Cutscenes have that old-timey film filter, and you really shouldn't expect anything less. I also absolutely love the loading screens, in which the character you'll be playing as flaunts their skills as the sun sets in the background. It's really neat. I can't really think of much negative to say about Red Dead Revolver. Sure, the bosses can be annoying in the rare times that you just can't figure out their weak spot, and the showdowns might annoy you, but overall, it's really just a fantastic start to a series. I mean, sure, the difficulty can get a bit uneven at the end of the game, but by then, you'll probably have the mechanics down so well that you won't mind attempting the more trying stages a few times until you get it right. The gameplay is smooth, combat is fun, the showdown modes are great time wasters, the graphics fit the atmosphere. Really? There's no reason to not play Red Dead Revolver. Sure, it may be linear, which might turn some people off, but that's not a mark against the game at all. In fact, I might dare to say that it keeps the pace going. Check this one out, regardless of whether you play any of the sequels or not. Final score? 6 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.